John Terrill is the producer, host, and editor of Count Gauntlet's Horrors from the public domain and co-host of the Good to Film podcast. He received a BA in Film and American Studies from William & Mary in 2012. Brian has taught video production and other tech courses with Fairfax Collegiate and Docs in Progress and enjoys helping students develop the technical skills needed to bring their creative visions to life. We are so excited to have him here today. We are waiting for a few more participants to return to the chat following our immense technical difficulties.
Yes, we'll give it just one more minute and then I promise I'll get started here. Thanks everybody for your patience. I think it's going to be fun. The goal that they gave me was a 45-minute runtime with some time afterwards for questions. And so we have the freedom to bleed a little past that 1 o'clock deadline. Nobody's in here right after us. So it's all going to be free flowing. This is a happy, liberated space.
Happy and liberated.
All right, let's get started. Subtitled my production, Strange, Horrifying, and Cheaply Produced, 100 Episodes of Public Access Superstardom. I hope to share with you the history of a series that I hosted on Fairfax Public Access Television from April 2013 up to October 2021, when I released the 100th episode, which will be screening this evening in the Tucker Theater as part of our festival. And because over 100 episodes, a little over 8 years, you tend to build up some lore. And to anyone coming in cold turkey, I want you to be caught up. I want to give you a little bit of a crash course on what the show is about, what I have done on the show so far, and kind of do an autopsy on what it all meant. So you'll see here is me in front of the famous Patterson footage of Bigfoot from when I made a trip out to where that was shot, as well as the team that makes the dream work. All my volunteer friends who have been part of the cast over the years. If you stuck around a couple episodes worth, I would usually carve you on a pumpkin come Halloween. So there's some examples of that from around about year 6. I also wanted to share a little bit about what public access television is and just give you the 411 if you wanted to become involved in it, because these facilities are offered in many local communities. Now, public access came about in the early days of cable television when the FCC ruled that cable companies should be considered common carriers. Basically, they use public lands to run their cables, so they ought to provide some kind of public service in the form of facilities and training to let people learn about and make their own television productions. Now, in the years that followed, there was some back and forth about this, a couple Supreme Court cases where it was debated, is this a freedom of speech issue? Should the cable companies have control over what is aired? Do they really need to provide these public facilities? And it waffled some. I think now it's decided on the municipal basis, like city by city, they decide what they're going to do. But a lot of communities have had these public access stations around since the 80s. Now, some characteristics of what you might find at your local public access TV station. Usually they're going to have a bank of cameras and some kind of pre-existing setup. For instance, at FPA, where I made Gauntlet, there was a kitchen set that they had all ready to go with a stove and a table and some chairs. They had a news anchor type desk. And then Gauntlet was usually produced on Studio B, which was more freeform. It was just like a bank of curtains and you could drag props and stuff in front of it and set up whatever set you wanted. For a long time, the back wall was painted with green screen paint so you could key it out. And then later on, they had a different setup where if you wanted to do that, you had to light the whole wall one consistent color, and that was pretty hard, but I eventually cracked it. So hopefully you'll be convinced by my green screen effects, should you come to episode 100, which I suggest you do, because we will have some Q&A with the cast, which is me and one other person so far. Hey, Taylor, I see you joining in the chat there. And sorry, could you say that again? Taylor, if you just said something, could you say that again?
It's muted and I can't unmute.
Okay, well, welcome. And then some perks of public access are that the dues are pretty low. At Fairfax Public Access, you could become a member for $25 a year and just come in and use the facilities whenever you reserve them. And you could also borrow equipment and use it in the field. And pretty much the only rule was you weren't supposed to use it for side hustles. But they had like LED lighting kits and cameras you could borrow, all kinds of stuff, pretty handy. Now, what are you likely to see should you tune in randomly to your local public access station? Well, we've got an example here, maybe the most prominent example from pop culture of television, of public access TV hosts are Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World. Because pretty much anybody can do this. There's a very low bar to entry. So what you get are a lot of like community-focused talk shows. I think the most episodes aired at Fairfax Public Access was like Vietnamese community chat or something. There's a lot of religious shows too, a lot of soapbox preachers. And then there's also horror hosts like me. We'll get into that a little more in just a minute. Now, the title of my program that I aired was Count Gauntlet's Horrors from the Public Domain. So what is the public domain? Well, this is the field of media which constitutes all creative work to which no exclusive intellectual property rights apply. So things where, for one reason or another, the copyright has lapsed or was never established in the first place. So before 1998, most works entered the public domain after 75 years. So at that point, everything before 1923 was public domain. But in 1998, some big lobbyists and big corporations pushed to have that extended randomly for 20 years. Just nope, freeze everything for 20 years because we gotta consider what's gonna happen, because some companies like Disney, who introduced Mickey Mouse in 1928, had a vested interest in extending that deadline. But works have begun entering yearly again as of 2018. So in January of this year, works from 1926 became public domain. So you might have seen news articles that Winnie the Pooh is now public domain. Do with him what you will. There's also some special cases where, for whatever reason, copyright was not renewed by the holder, or in the case of maybe the most famous film in the public domain, Night of the Living Dead, there was no copyright information placed on the title card at the beginning of the movie. So from its release, it was public domain, which was not intentional by the filmmakers, who just lost their copyright when they released because of that. I don't think that glitch applies anymore. One other somewhat interesting example is the Rankin Bass Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer TV special, which if you look at the title card, the Roman numeral is wrong. It says copyright 1164 instead of copyright 1964. So there are those who will argue that at least the visual content is public domain. Now, I am a horror host. This is part of a legacy of TV presenters who showed packages of horror and thriller films on local TV back in the day, largely to fill unpopular airtime. So say on Saturday night, when people are going out on dates, having lives, you don't show anything on TV. Not until Saturday Night Live in 1975. This was the dead time. And so the local stations would pick somebody from their crew, usually someone who was an anchor on the evening news, who maybe also had a local kids show they would do during the day. They'd jump into their coffin, put on the vampire cape, and be the horror host that night. So some horror hosts throughout the eras. One of the first was Vampira in the 50s, who really established the format. Local to me in the DC area is Count Gordeval. I've run into him at many a convention. Most famous of all, the horror host to really break onto the stage and accrue some fame and fortune thereby is Elvira. She's probably the one that you know of if you're new to the scene. And then one who has really kept the medium going is Svengoolie. Check out MeTV on Saturday nights, and you might see a resemblance here. This is coincidental. I have only recently started checking out Svengoolie. He does have a very cool coffin. Now, as for my show itself, I wanted to lead into it by talking about some of my own artistic influences. By the way, in the chat, in the room, you're welcome to sound off with questions at any time. I'll throw you the talking pillow if you're here in person. Probably you can hear me and I can hear you. But anyway, things that have influenced Gauntlet's art and visual style. I like to think that the aesthetic of the show is equal parts Pee Wee Herman and Ed Gein. Occasionally there will be some blood and guts, just casual. You know, it happens. Probably the biggest influence in terms of a style I was trying to capture is Pee Wee's Playhouse. Now, you might be a little bit aware of this. Maybe we got some hardcore Pee Wee fans out there. But the premise of this show, it was on in the late 80s and early 90s, is that a weirdo, basically a man-child, has a house that's full of pop art and puppets. And he's always playing host to this, like saloon revolving door of his friends who are always popping in. You know, he's got a friend who's a sea captain and one who's a mail carrier, and they've all got these archetypical costumes, and they pop in periodically to experience his weirdness. And this was basically what I wanted to capture, have it so that Gauntlet would be the main presence who was always there. And then when I could rope friends in, they would have their own recurring characters that they would play. Some would be receptive to Gauntlet's oddity. Others would kind of call Gauntlet out on his out-of-touch strangeness. Other influences, I wanted to shout out the show Beyond Belief, hosted by Jonathan Frakes. Definitely an influence on my perception of male fashion. On this show, he would walk around this museum set full of like spooky props and point at things and make puns. He'd always have like a shit-eating grin. I really enjoyed his presentation. More people should watch this show. Recently, there was a meme of supercuts of the jokes that he would tell, and I recommend it. One other thing, my personal favorite film is called UHF. It's hosted and stars Weird Al Yankovic. It's his sole feature film to date. And the premise is that he inherits a UHF station, which was kind of the precursor to cable. You had to order a special antenna for your TV to get these additional channels. So he takes over this TV station and he makes a bunch of weird TV shows, and the community falls in love with his weird brainchildren, as it were. And especially in episode 100, I wanted to capture some of the images from UHF. So come tonight and you'll see Gauntlet and his best friend forced to wear a clown suit. So like I said, I want to just kind of rush you in, get you in the door with some understanding of what you'll see should you come to the screening tonight. So welcome. Some milestones for Count Gauntlet. We started airing in April of 2013, so how fitting that I'm here now in April on the 9th anniversary. The first episode featured the 1961 film, The Beast of Yucca Flats. And I released an episode pretty much every single month, usually an hour long. And I think over the run of the show, I only didn't submit an episode 3 of the months. So 100 episodes over 103 months. And I opted for the special airing schedule, which meant that if you submitted a film or an episode, they would just plug it in wherever there was a hole in the schedule. And there were a lot of holes. So usually every single day it would be aired once or twice. So like 30 times over the course of a month. And my idea there was that it would catch people unawares. It was television by ambush. So that if they were randomly flipping the channels at 4 in the morning, which is usually the only time you're going to come across public access, there was a good chance that they would see Gauntlet. The first 30 episodes were broadcast in standard definition, so just low quality 480. And of course, I had to stick around until it was in HD, which finally came around for our 3rd Halloween episode, episode 31, in October 2015. And I mentioned I have clips. I think those are going to be a little more entertaining than me just rambling. So I wanted to show off one of our special effects milestones. This was episode 25, entitled Scareboro Fair. It was our medieval episode. And here is our scene where we are terrorized by a giant. All right, let's see if the sound is going to work here. All right, I'm not getting any sound, so hopefully y'all can restore that pretty quickly here.
Let me see what's going on here. It doesn't say you have audio sharing. That's odd.
All right, well, this was working too a little while ago. I did come in an hour early.
That's right.
Let's see. Just a moment here. I do have one other clip to try. I skipped over. How do I move this window down to just a second?
Hold it the light on.
One other clip I wanted to share, everybody, is this one, which is the one we tested earlier. All right, what's going on? Let's see.
Maybe try scrolling across the bottom, like you see the bottom of the audio volume mixers.
Yes.
Looks like it should be fine.
All right. Tell me, Zoom, can you hear anything when I'm playing this? Because we can't hear it here in the room, which is not.
No.
Okay. All right. Promise this was working earlier.
I'll go right. I'll take right back.
So everybody will have it working in just a second. Appreciate your patience. Appreciate you joining us. Came here, had it up and running like half an hour early, and it was all functioning, all functional. And then they said, stop the screen share so they could change something. And then now it's all kaput, it seems, but we're almost back. Let's see if I can join audio. Speaker, Crestron. Okay, I'll put that. That seems fine.
We got it right. We had to restart. No, I'm here.
Okay.
Here. Let's do this. It should be. All right, try that again.
Okay. Here it is. Okay, thank you, Steve.
Yep.
All right. So one other clip I wanted to share real quick is the end credits from a typical episode of Pee-wee's Playhouse. Something I'm going to be talking about is how important I've always found end credits to be, because that's what you leave on. What a shame that credits that used to be at the start of a movie and made you sit through acknowledging everybody's contributions now goes at the end. I wanted to make credits something that you want to stick around for. And the Pee-wee credits are important because I like the melancholy tone of these. At the end of every episode, Pee-wee would rocket off on a scooter and he'd go home to somewhere that we never saw. You know, you would think that he lives at the Playhouse, but I guess that's just where he works. But at the end, he leaves to destinations unknown and he drives off into the sunset and this plays, this like minor key version of the theme song. And if you come to watch episode 100 specifically tonight, you'll see I tried to capture this spirit. There you go. And now for that medieval clip with the giant that demonstrates the special effects that we brought to bear for Count Gauntlet.
Oh, you're so large. What are you doing here? Go away, man. Oh, taking me into the sky. My stamp collection.
There you go. So that's the caliber of entertainment that we're talking about here. The high watermark kind of some of our special effects. Because I did want to set us free from the conventional public access setup. It's not just chairs. It's not just people sitting there. And I tried to offer something new every episode, some new setting, some new take. And as far as the premise of the show, I'm just going to lead in with the ballad theme song. It'll kind of explain who Gauntlet is and what Gauntlet does.
Welcome, foolish mortals, to Count Gauntlet's Horrors from the Public Domain. I am your host, Count Simon Gauntlet, and each episode I'll be leading you on a journey through the history of film. Specifically, we'll be exploring that eldritch abyss known as the public domain. These are films forgotten by time or abandoned by their creators. The strange, the horrifying, the poorly and cheaply produced. All of these are the purviews of the public domain. So what are we waiting for? Come, join me in my crypt. It's bigger on the inside. Come, join me.
There lived a man so long ago, Count Gauntlet was his name. His horror host abilities had brought him wide acclaim. The people flocked from miles around each Gauntlet movie night, not knowing that the films he showed infringed on copyright. Upon discovering this fact and learning it was true, an angry mob of lawyers formed with pitchforks, torches too. They tracked the Count and sought to stop his movie hosting ways, and torches blazing put an end to Gauntlet's earthly days. But our man was too resilient to let death be the last word. He stirred, sat up upon his slab and vowed he must be heard. So he stocked his tomb with gadgets from the local studio, intent on showing movies on an awesome TV show. But he had to find a legal way, so Gauntlet racked his brain. 'Twas then he learned of something called the public domain. Now here he is, the time has come, his dreams are coming true. Count Gauntlet's here to share a film in hopes that you won't sue.
Shout out to the Internet Archive, www.archive.org, which was the source of many public domain video resources for me over the years. Hi, Ted. I see you just joined the meeting. Welcome. Some other things to know about the Gauntlet premise. I was joined in my crypt by my manservant Ogrot, a shambling butler inspired by Lurch on the Addams Family. And if you come to the screening tonight, you will see I'm joined by an actor whose character we usually refer to as the projectionist. His character was that he kind of just took on whatever job he needed to. So he was jack of all trades. The other recurring theme was that he had a penchant for drink. He was always making cocktails and stuff. And at one point he became our Santa Claus. Then my brother would portray the Blizzard Wizard, who was an ice-themed sorcerer, and he's prominent in episode 100 as well. He now lives down in Florida working at Disney World, and so I visited him down there, and he's kind of a co-host this episode. So there were a couple recurring segments that made up a typical Gauntlet episode. One, I mentioned that we had a kitchen set at the public access station. So I wanted to use this to prepare unusual, monstrous menu items. Things that got a little gory, a little outside the typical strictures of the Western palate. So this was usually at Thanksgiving, but not always. And we prepared a laundry list of menu items. So some organ meats, we had hearts, tongues, intestines. Of course, we had to have brains, lamb brains. I think that was the only actual brain. I think the human brain was gelatin mold. Sorry to shatter the illusion. But we also had some unmentionables. So bull penis and testicles. I think we had some pig ovaries. And of course, I had a phlebotomist come on and draw my blood on TV so that I could drink that in our vampire episode. So I have done that. My friends told me that I probably would not be able to find a willing phlebotomist, but I did. Shout out in the chat. I know you're watching. And occasionally we'd have not just meat. We did have some beverages we prepared. We did a whole cocktails from the crypt episode. And then we made our most notorious libation, which is called soup beer. This is when you mix equal parts warm chicken noodle soup and ice cold root beer. And it very nearly captures the color and texture of vomit. It's very foul. They could use it as like a crowd dispersal technique. Other recurring features, I like to travel and showcase haunted landmarks. I would especially do this during the Halloween season. So we'd film a month ahead. Every September, I would find myself bound for a new spooky landmark. Now, if you're local to the Fairfax area, you probably know about the Bunny Man. He's the DC area's most famous. Not really a cryptid. It's like in the early days, pre-1970s, when there weren't a bunch of suburbs out there, he terrorized some people, apparently wearing a bunny suit. But we went out to the landmark associated with those events. Then in the years to come, we went a little further afield. We visited Sleepy Hollow, New York, Salem, Massachusetts. Here's me and Ograt by the Elizabeth Montgomery Bewitched statue in the Salem Town Square. I did a zombie-themed voodoo episode in New Orleans. Went to Roswell. Went to the Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Then there was a whirlwind tour of the Pacific Northwest, where I went to some Bigfoot landmarks. I visited the town of Twin Peaks. For any David Lynch fans out there. And then this year, I went to Florida, which doesn't jump out as a horror landmark, of course, but I visited a lot of alligator-themed tourist traps. We feed the gators by hand, ride the gators. So there's a lot of up close and personal HD gator content if you come tonight. And then the big reason that I traveled down to the Orlando area was because it's the home of Creative Engineering. And Creative Engineering is a company run by an inventor named Aaron Fechter. He was the one who created the animatronic bands that played at Chuck E. Cheese's and Showbiz Pizza in the 80s and early 90s. The inspiration for the horror video game series Five Nights at Freddy's. Here we are with Rolf de Wolf, one of the featured performers in the band. And so that's a big part of the episode tonight is our tour with Aaron Fechter. Because I also tried to get interviews each year that I would tour. Music was a big featured attraction of the show. I have experience being part of the school band. I played the clarinet, but over the years, I've dabbled in some other instruments. So I wanted to show a few quick clips here. Here's from our New Year's episode.
Bears.
So as you can see, it helps to have talented friends to draw upon. That's the big takeaway I want to give from this session is it's valuable to network. Talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I want to play another clip here. Hopefully it's cool if I go to like 1:10. So we got a little bit of a delayed start.
Yeah.
Those visiting virtually, I appreciate you checking in. So this next clip comes from one of our Christmas episodes. Year round, I tried to be spooky, but also tie in whatever was seasonal to that time of year. So here we are with some Christmas carols.
Well, I think this will do for now for decorations. But really, what I want to see out of all of you is some genuine Christmas spirit. And you can't have Christmas spirit without some good old Christmas carols. What sort of songs do you like to sing around here?
Well, all the usual Christmas things, I'd say. Here, let's lay one on us. Hograt, lead us in.
My pleasure.
Already, I'm not pleased with this.
Oh, Christmas tree, 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 oh, Christmas tree. Mellifluous.
All right, well, those were some of the words. I will agree with you on that. Anything else?
Well, what else have we got in the pipeline over there, Hograt?
Let's try this one. Deck the halls with bells of holly, fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel, fa la 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 la. Troll the ancient Yuletide carol, fa la 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 la.
Oh, ho, ho, ho. That was most jolly.
Yes, very, very lively. And actually, I've got a special surprise here for you. If Hograt will lead us in, we'll see what we can do here.
What are you doing, man?
Let's do this. Go, Hograt.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and ever pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoicing, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Down on your knees, hear the angels' voices, a night divine, oh night when Christ was born, oh night, oh night, oh divine. So what do you think?
Well, that was certainly an unconventional delivery, but a good Christmas song, as I always say, can never be done the same way twice. And you have certainly given me a unique perspective on these old classic tunes.
That's good.
And there you go. That's indicative of the flavor, kind of what you can expect. If you hated that, I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to offer you. But that's some of the flavor. That's your little Baskin-Robbins sample spoon. All right. Oh, and then, as I said, credits always very important. Let me also recommend the Free Music Archive. This is where a lot of people put up Creative Commons music that you can use in your projects. Always check what the stipulations are. Some say like download only, not to be reused, but a lot of stuff is royalty free and you can just drop it into your project if you acknowledge their input. All right, so this is from episode 63. It's where I thought the vibe I was most going for in the credits especially came across. This was our skeleton themed episode.
is so disturbing.
That was one of my favorite parts of each episode, was finding a music track and some video to stick together, create a new thing, a new media object. A couple things to knock through real quick, and then I'll let you have some questions.
Great. For me and for my country.
Here's me playing the theremin, if you've never seen that before. Talk more about that at length. Don't want to take your whole day here, but another thing I did over the course of the show is I amassed a large collection of Halloween props, costumes, things that get called decorations. I resent that term. They're a functional part of my life. They're not just decoration. But here's my guillotine, for instance. My electric chair with all kinds of bells and whistles on there. It makes a lot of noise. I have a suit of armor now that I didn't have before the show. Godzilla suit. Several coffins. Here's my one with the leopard print interior. That's a zebra, not a leopard. I apologize. I just wanted to show an example of how planning comes to fruition. Here you'll see this is a sketch I did for what I wanted the set to look like, and then here's the set. I only realized afterward how closely you could click through them. I think it's pretty neat. It's a dream made real. That's what Gauntlet is all about. I would usually feature a public domain film as per the title. Lots of examples, Robot Monster, Manos, The Hands of Fate, The Phantom from Space, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, whatever fits within the hour. And sometimes I base the plot of the episode around what happens in the movie, and other times I have a plot in mind that I wanted for the episode, and then I just find some film that tied in with that. Okay, now we're running towards the end here, and you might be wondering, why did I do this? What is the appeal? Maybe you just thought what you saw and have heard is very strange, but I think it did have some positives. It kept me producing content on a schedule and trying new things. Like I said, I knocked out one of these every month. And frankly, it was a good excuse to do things I enjoyed already. So traveling, trying new foods, getting to play music. And it allowed me to create a social event and a social space, which you'll find as you get older, especially, becomes more difficult. Harder to maintain friendships as an adult and come up with a reason to gather people together. And so this was how I did that. And the mission statement that I came up with somewhat recently is, Gauntlet is a crucible, a Willy Wonka style test to find people who share my passion for traveling, for trying new foods, collecting kitschy crap, and making a fool of myself in front of a camera. If at the end of the day, I sometimes stand alone, it's with the knowledge that I've gone where I wanted, eaten what I wanted, and truly been myself the entire time. Now, public access, if nothing else, is a venue to let you do that. There's not a lot of content restrictions. Like I said, I did drink my own blood. And one of the benefits to maybe not having anybody out there watching is they don't care what you do. You get to broadcast into the ether, send your message out there like a message in a bottle, and maybe somebody will find it, cast adrift on the tide as they scroll through their channels at 4 in the morning. Some thoughts as we head into episode 100. I do hope you come to check it out tonight if you've liked anything that you've seen or heard here today. There were a couple of times previously that I thought about ending the show. I thought maybe episode 31, that's a nice spooky Halloween number. It happened to coincide with our 3rd Halloween show, but we had technical difficulties then because that was by chance the time that they were changing the station over to HD. So there was like signal issues, couldn't end it then. Then I thought episode 50, I'll go out with a bang. That's a nice even number. I put together a musical spectacular for that show, but That was the episode they tore out the green screen wall. So I couldn't get the effects to work to my liking. So it couldn't be episode 50. Just so happened that in episode 51, Professor Barnard, here with the Media Studies program, brought his class. He was running the Summer Institute at that time. And I was in a hiatus then after episode 50, not sure what I was going to do. And he said, hey, could I bring my whole class on the show? And I'm not going to say no to the proverbial captive audience. I said, yes, please bring them, and I will make more show just for you. And it was so revitalizing that it kept me going for another 4.5 years. Some specific accomplishments I'm proud of. In episode 100, we featured a circus theme for the first time. You'll see here's my friend in the clown suit. We did make that journey down to Florida to visit the robotics warehouse. I think it made for a cool segment that I hope you'll come see. And I built a permanent set for some of my most heavy duty props. I've got my sarcophagus here, a big taxidermy dragon head, a nice display for my suit of armor. But you might also be asking, why end the show? Well, in my time doing the public access horror host circuit, I've seen that the people who stay in this game for the long haul are maybe not the most successful, maybe not the most famous. It's not a huge money-making thing, but it has been a lot of fun, and it's given me some valuable memories. So if you're thinking about this for yourself, should you do public access? Well, the pros are that the equipment is cheap. You can draw on a lot of free labor. Many of the volunteers are senior citizens doing this for fun. And like I said, a lot of creative freedom. You're not bound by network standards. You don't have to worry about going out and getting permits and things. What is the chat saying?
I can read
if that's important, you can catch me up.
Yeah, sure. That was a question. If you want to finish this slide, and then I can take questions after.
Okay, I've got like one more slide after this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so some cons are that you kind of get what you pay for. You know, this is not going to be reaching millions of eyes. And when you've got a free workforce, the production values aren't going to be the highest from my end as well. And some of the people who are long-term public access producers have a certain air of delusion. They think they're big deal directors. And listen, buddy, you gave yourself this job. You were not appointed by anybody. You were not elected. You're not getting paid. So your soapbox is one that you set on the curb by yourself. And I've tried to always have the appropriate humility. Is it real filmmaking? I can't answer that for you. You're going to have to be the judge. Not a lot of people necessarily watch it. If you check out my YouTube channel, some of the videos have got maybe 30 views, something along those lines. But I take the opportunity to share it to reach more eyes when I can. So I do appreciate the festival inviting me to come down here to celebrate my 100th episode, giving me a stipend, paying for my hotel reservations. So at the very least, you can get something like that out of an arrangement of this sort. Bottom line, Count Gauntly as a project really has facilitated many of the greatest moments of my life post-college. It has let me stretch my wings creatively and given me an outlet. I will say that overall, the greatest value lies in the connections that you form, the memories that you make with other people. So do reach out however you can. Try to make your voice heard. And hey, this is William and Mary. You want to find your tribe. Surround yourself with people who will challenge you creatively, but also celebrate your ideas, help you bring them into the world. This image here is a piece of fan art I received from somebody on the internet. They watched the Phantom from Space episode and they messaged me through Facebook. They said, hey, I wanted to show you some art inspired by the episode I saw today. And they threw together this really amazing piece of art with like actual color shading and stuff. And I have a big framed print of this on my wall. So you can reach people. It's possible. All right, I wanted to show one last clip, and then I promise we'll take questions. Or what's the question that you got already?
This is like got at least 3 parts of this question. So you
okay,
should
I show this one clip first?
Clip.
Okay, one more clip, and then I'll throw it over to questions. Thank you for watching and listening, guys. I'm coming in pretty close to my 1:10 deadline, so I do try to manage my time well. So hopefully that has come across. Now, this is a clip from episode 50. It's a montage of clips of every episode in order up to that point. There is a similar montage incorporating material from all 100 episodes in our feature tonight. So do come back if you're interested at 5:30 to the Tucker Theater in Tucker Hall, where we will have our big event with a cast Q&A.
You feel like singing a song and want other people to sing along. Just sing what you feel, don't let anyone say it's wrong. You're trying to paint a picture, but you're not sure which colors belong. Just paint what you see, don't let anyone say it's wrong. You're feeling strung out like a kite, or stung awake in the night. It's alright to be frightened when there's a light. What light? There's a light, one light. There's a light, white light inside of you. If you feel like you need somebody to pick you up when you drag, don't lose sight of yourself. Don't let anyone change your bag. And it's the whole world singing your songs, and all your paintings have been hung. Just remember, what was yours is everyone's from now on. And that's not wrong or right. You can struggle with it all you like. You'll just get uptight when there's a light. What light? There's a light, one light. There's a light, white light. There's a light, white light. There's a light, what light? There's a light, one light. There's a light, white light. There's a light, white light inside you.
And there we go. That's the montage from episode 50.
Okay, we have a question from Hillary Brooks. Hillary says, so awesome. I would totally watch this all the time. Did you have lots of fans and viewers? The Horror Host is such an old school format. When and how did you discover it? And what was that experience like for you? Parentheses, I love this. Thank you for sharing this with us. I think it's amazing you did all this just for the fun of it. Thank you for contributing to this world. Close parentheses.
Wow, that's a really great couple of questions, Hillary. I guess there was one key question. Thank you for that. But the key is, how did I find out about horror hosting? Well, I'm glad you asked, because when I was 7 years old, I tuned in. I watched a lot of PBS as a kid. I guess I still do.
Oh, thank you so much. That was really
thank you for
great.
coming.
Now.
I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the festival.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
But I watched a lot of PBS, and one of the local PBS stations was based at Nova Community College. So there was a channel, NVCC 53. And every Friday night, they would show an episode of the Red Skelton Show, who is an old stand-up comedian. And then after a half hour of Red Skelton, they would put on some old sci-fi movie. So Beastie Yucca Flats was the first one I ever remember seeing. So of course I had to make that Gauntlet episode 1. But there was a lot of others. There was stuff like She-Demons, Killers from Space, some that weren't public domain. There was like the Ray Harryhausen film, It Came From Beneath the Sea. I think they showed the old animated film, Fantastic Planet. All kinds of odd old stuff, a lot of which made its way to be featured on the Gauntlet. Oh, The Hideous Sun Demon, check out that one. It's about like a werewolf, except instead of during the night, it's during the day. So it's not the moon, it's the sun. Really creative concept. So I tuned into that like every week from 7 to 9, when I was 7 to when I was 9, when they showed Night of the Living Dead. And it scared me so bad, I stopped tuning in. And then when I came back like a year and a half later, the channel was going. It just wasn't there anymore. Channel 53 was Spike TV. So it was kind of lost to the ages, and I wanted to bring it back. Was there another part of that question? Or another question?
So there's like, did you know how many fans or viewers did you have? Like, what interaction did you have there?
Right. So generally viewership, at least on YouTube, pretty low. They don't give you any information from the cable station as far as how many people watch the show. On the one hand, I guess that would be useful because you could kind of tailor your content to what gets more views ostensibly. But also in some ways, maybe you don't want to know how many reactions you get. I mean, people out there who've, for instance, tried online dating, it's like there can be deafening silence. Sometimes better not to know. Sometimes better just to stand on the stage and shout into the void and assume perhaps someone sees me.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you mentioned at the very beginning of going to different conferences and festivals. What was that experience like for you, and like the interaction that you had there and the community you found?
Great question. So some things that I've gotten to do in this role. There was a Burke, which is the town that I'm from, a Burke historical convention where they invited me to come and speak. So Burke is like officially ground zero for the Bunny Man. That's where the bridge is. And so like they did like a Bunny Man Halloween event, and I was a featured speaker. So that was cool. Conventions I usually just go to visit, but there's another horror host in the area, a guy named Carlos Borloff, who produces Monster Madhouse. And he really tries to make a go of it and make that his living with mixed success. But we've done some collabs, including probably the high water mark is in 2017, we rented out the Fairfax Elks Lodge and hosted the Fairfax Halloween Spooktacular, which was like a 4-day weekend event, very much inspired by my time volunteering with the William and Mary Film Festival, where we had, people could walk in and get beer, and we had like a big sheet strung up with a projector where we were broadcasting movies, and we had a haunted house that we built in the basement, and I got to just walk around the festival grounds like a lord of the earth and revel in the experience. To try to capture the magic that the William and Mary Film Festival, now the Ampersand Festival, brings to its visitors.
Cool. I also had a question, if you could talk about your podcast and like what that experience is like, because you've mostly been talking about film stuff, but I also am interested in podcasting.
Excellent. So Dan, are you by any chance still in the audience? If you're at work, you can knock on your desk or hit the thumbs up button.
Dan's unmuted.
Maybe I need to stop screen sharing.
No, I don't. We're not risking that again.
Okay, that's fine.
In the audience, and I'm muted, but.
Okay, well, you can type in the chat, Dan, if you are there, and we'll relay that. Anyway, so I enjoy podcasts, as I'm sure many millennials do, and I've grown fond of the format. I had a friend who's going to be part of our cast Q&A tonight, who made a movie review podcast that I was especially inspired by. Then when another friend of mine came up to me and said, hey, I'm getting really into film criticism. Do you want to co-host a movie review podcast? I said, yes, I want to do that thing. And so he is really the mastermind behind editing and hosting this thing. He's got some web developer experience. And the name of that show is The Goods, a film podcast, because we want to give you the goods. We want to give you the information about what we think about movies. And also the title came out of, we collaborated on an entertainment blog for a long time, for which I wrote a series of posts on my 100 favorite films. From Manos, The Hands of Fate at number 100, up to UHF at number 1. And I did that as a vanity project throughout 2013. But then I thought, well, what about some other movies that I like? I'm not done, I'm still bitten by the bug. Maybe they're not my 100 favorites, but maybe they are still good. Maybe I still want to talk about them. And so that is another source of our title.
Cool.
Did you want to know anything about like how we got started? Dan's really the one to ask. If you have technical questions, you can email him.
Yeah, I'll probably, Dan just put the stuff in the website in the chat, and I will probably go see if I can find contact stuff from there.
Wonderful. Subscribe, guys. You can find us on all the major podcast distributors: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Skitcher, all of those.
Cool. I've got a question. Do you find yourself, are you still in contact with any of your William & Mary classmates? Or like, have they been involved with this project at all?
Yes, great question. So it's a lot of people I went to high school with, or it was, which another reason that the show has kind of tapered off is that people move. I need to make some new friends. And that's just the way of the world. So like many of you have come to the festival, even as current students, to network. That's what I'm here to do, to form some new contacts. So do shoot me an email. Should have written out a contact slide. I'm also at facebook.com/CountGauntly. And so I maintain that page to this day. Here I am on YouTube as Trivia Lord, or if you just look up Gauntly, you'll find me.
Cool. Do you have any future projects that you think you're going to do besides the podcast? Is there anything? That was my question.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to know.
Thank you. So what is next?
What is next? We're your two biggest fans.
Thank you. Well, that is a great question. I'm open to input. Another reason I ended the show is to really give myself a chance to do some soul searching, figure out what that next step is. Maybe establish myself in a more legitimate way in the industry, which I'm sure will also have its pros and cons. Like if I'm with a big network, probably I can't do a severed head barbershop quartet. But who knows? I won't know until I dip my toe into that world. So do keep me in mind. I have a background in editing and producing, obviously. I do have friends who draw upon my talents, dubious though they may be as an actor. I am willing to put myself in front of the camera. Something I do is drone videography. So I've got a drone, and if you need me for realty projects, and I do have some film ideas as well. So I keep doing like the DC 48-hour film project, still keep up my public access membership, and I'm in a holding pattern right now as far as what exactly is going to be my next project. So I'm open to input. If the class needs to come by again, I will probably open the doors of the crypt once again.
Did you do the 24 speed this year?
Yes.
Ooh.
I did the 24 speed as well. Yeah.
Oh, great. So yes, you're both current students?
Yes.
Great. pains me that they broke them up in recent years to a current student screening and an alumni screening. I don't like that. The whole point was that the undergrads could see the graduates and the graduates could see the undergrads and people could mesh. So I would have come to the earlier one if I could. If you're curious, come to the alumni screening.
There'll be the playlist of the student screening will be up on the William & Mary Library's YouTube channel.
Okay, what's your team?
The Botetown Squad.
Great.
My team, I didn't do a team this year. I had a concert. My band had a concert that night, but I've done it in the past. My team's won awards in the past, but I didn't do it this year.
Okay, well, I do hope you come for that. I think is that Saturday night?
I believe so.
I think it's Saturday night.
Will you be in town for the next few days?
Yes, I am. And it's going to expound on some of the same themes in my 24 speed this year. It's kind of a companion piece to episode 100.
Cool.
So it's all a building universe.
All right, I'm gonna ask the chat. Does anyone else have any last minute questions? If not, I feel like this is a good place to leave off. All right. Brian can also be seen in the 48-hour film project this Sunday at 12:30 p.m. as part of the William Mary Shorts program. Oh my gosh.
I will definitely be there. One of my films is screening there.
Oh,
as
wonderful.
well.
What's the title of the film?
Just Visiting. It's like one of 2 student films that's being screened. So yes.
Very cool. Could I show one more short?
Yeah, sure.
And if you guys want to break away, you're welcome to, but I just wanted to show one more thing for my presentation, if I had time. And this is to show how I tried in various episodes to present a pastiche, a tribute to another artistic style, and really try to capture that in my own work. I recommend it as an editing exercise. If you see something you like, try to ape it. Try to capture that style. And so I first wanted to show what I was trying to imitate. This is the credits from, I think it's a 1987 film called Harry and the Hendersons. It's a movie about Bigfoot. Family brings home a Bigfoot from a camping trip. And it's got kind of an
Get ready for warm weather during Kohl's home sale. Find patio furniture starting at
filter. Well, I guess they really rotoscoped the footage.
You touched my life and turned my heart around. It seems when
You see, it's got a clip of the live action, and then it kind of does that stutter, shutter effect, and then it transitions into the rotoscope animation, and you get a freeze frame where it's detailed. You get the idea. And then here is the Gauntlet tribute. And this Gauntlet tribute comes to you from episode 78, which was the Pacific Northwest tour. It might be the best Gauntlet episode, so I would point you to that one. Although, of course, also come to see episode 100 tonight. But here is the Gauntlet tribute to the Harry and the Hendersons credits.
can you miss what you never have known? And can you ache for a place that was never your home? No misgivings or shame, like a moth to the flame, to burn up or fizzle alone. Can you know who inhabits your skin? And can you trust that you won't blow away in the wind? And do you tether your hopes or let go of the ropes in the hope that you someday descend? Just follow the road. The blood in your veins track for the trains. The heart always aims for the place where you belong. Just follow it home. Though it may not agree with the path that you seek, sometimes you just need to stop searching and stand up and go. Just follow the road.